generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. Today we are talking about the latest movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. Uh, we're going to talk about non-spoiler things here in the beginning, and then you will, be fully aware of when we are transitioning to spoilers, and we'll give you a little bit of time to click away if you don't want to hear spoilers. So, like I said here in the beginning, let's talk about some non-spoilers. Uh, I would say going into this movie, I was very excited, just because we've loved the Deadpool movies in the past. I think Ryan Reynolds is a perfect casting for Deadpool, and the trailers looked great. And not only that, but since Disney bought 20th Century Fox, we've all been kind of wondering when are some of these X-Men characters, Deadpool, uh, who's going to be involved, with that merge into the MCU and how are they going to do it? Well, clearly, as the title says, Deadpool and Wolverine, and it's confirmed that this is part of the MCU. Well, there's probably a good chance that this has something to do with it at the bare minimum. To what extent, we didn't really know. But I think it was a great movie. I would say from the get-go, they set the tone very well. Uh, the music is great. Ryan Reynolds is great. Hugh Jackman is great. The chemistry is great between the two characters. Really, my only complaint about this movie, and it's very, very minimal, is that just some of the CGI didn't look quite as good as it could have been. So, straight up prime example, even from the previews, is when they're at the diner. So there's a scene in the previews where they're both at the diner alone, and that scene in particular was one of them that just didn't look very, in my opinion, did not look very good on screen. There's also some other things later on that are spoilers, so I'm not going to say them, that kind of had them too, but we'll talk about later when we get there. But like I said, I think this is a really, really good movie. If you're a fan of Deadpool and Wolverine, for sure, definitely go see the movie in theater. But I think this is probably the latest Marvel event where it's like, you gotta go see this one in theater. So, um, yeah, that's kind of my opinion. Sarah, what'd you think?
I also loved the movie. The amount of comedy that they packed into this thing and just unexpected events, I think was a lot of fun. It's definitely some very dark humor, so probably not a great movie to take your kids to unless you are pretty confident it's gonna all go over their head. So viewer beware for that.
Well,
Um,
to that point though, if the adult or parent has seen the other Deadpool movies, they kind of know what to expect.
yeah. Yeah, I'd feel like they kicked it up a notch here, but anyway, one thing that kind of bothered me, and this is really more of a nitpicky thing, and it's not something that like should be a surprise because we see it in the trailer, but when they show the one lady just like she almost looks like a conductor, the way that she's moving Wolverine's arms around. And again, this is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. She looks so overpowered and almost kind of silly in that way. And I think that's kind of the point is that she's supposed to be really strong, but it doesn't look realistic. And I know that sounds weird to say in a movie where people regenerate and a man has claws growing out of his hands, but it looks funny. It looks misplaced. I didn't like it. I didn't like it from the trailer. I didn't like it in the film. Did it detract from the movie enough that I don't like it? Absolutely not. I love this movie. But That's the one thing that really kind of bothered me.
That might also go kind of hand in hand with what I said. The CGI of it just wasn't quite there. Like maybe if we cleaned it up a little bit, made it look a little more believable, probably would have been pretty good, right? You probably wouldn't even be thinking about it right now. But there's little things where if they were cleaned up and polished just a little bit more, it would have made the movie like that much closer to, in my opinion, pretty close to perfection. But yeah,
So not a big deal, but just kind of something that's a little bothersome, I'd say. And again, you see that from the trailer, so it's not like a surprise of like, oh, I wish they hadn't done that. Like you know it's coming at some point.
yeah. One thing I will say, and I'm gonna be careful with how I say this, just because I'm not gonna say spoilers. But like I said in the very beginnings, this is kind of that movie where you should have somewhat of an idea of the fact that this is kind of where the 20th Century Fox stuff is going to start merging with the MCU. And with that, I feel like if you understand or you've seen, a lot of the stuff from both companies slash timelines, I think that would help understand some of the humor. There are so many one-liners where from Deadpool himself where I feel like if you don't have some of that background, you might miss out on some of the jokes. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is you could have two different experiences here seeing the movie, right? If you've seen, I shouldn't say all, but all the stuff that would be associated with Deadpool and Wolverine in the past, you'd be better set up for this movie than if you hadn't. So, with again, beating around the bush here, there were things that happened in this movie that I got to appreciate more because I knew about them that Sarah and my mother-in-law didn't get to appreciate as much because they weren't aware of what was going on or the significance of what was going on. And they were huge parts in the movie. So, like I said, if you kind of know the history of it, I think that'll be a little bit better experience. But do you have to watch all the movies to have a good time? No. I think you could walk right into this pretty fresh. Just understand that, you got Deadpool, you got Wolverine, have some fun.
Well, and even from a plot standpoint too, just outside of one-liners, like thinking of, do I need to watch Deadpool 1 and 2 to know what's going on in this one, for example? I think the answer is no. I think you could walk into this one fresh, not having seen Deadpool before. And same with not really knowing a whole lot about Wolverine. Like if you know generally who he is, the fact that he's from the X-Men, I think that gives you enough background because they do such a good job explaining what you need to know in the film. Um, that the film doesn't need like prior context to understand the plot, if that makes sense. You get what
Right,
I'm trying to say?
right. There's something that actually it bothered me a lot that they were saying. This could be me just being, I don't know if ignorant is the word or just oblivious to the situation. But whenever X-Men was referred to, they kept saying X-Man. And I feel like that was kind of like when people say Pokemon instead of Pokemon. It was just my brain was tweaking out a little bit.
Well, I think that's because they were trying to say that in a singular, like I am an X-Man. You wouldn't say I am an X-Men.
I don't
You
know.
might say I'm part of the X-Men, but you wouldn't say I am an X-Men. I don't it did sound weird to hear. I'll give you that.
Say I've never heard X-Man be referenced. And so when I heard it in this film, it was very weird to me. But maybe that's a thing. Like I said, there's a chance that I don't even know what I'm talking about, and it's completely a thing. It was just weird, just for me. But uh,
One other non-spoiler thing is stay for the after credits. There is some stuff to watch.
yeah, yep. Um, yeah. So let's go ahead and let's give it a rating, and then we will transition to the spoiler section. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump right into it. Coming out of this, even from the get-go of this movie. I was thinking like there's so much love and care in this movie. There is so much attention to detail. And then as the movie progressed, there was just more and more goodies to munch on from this movie that I thought it was honestly, I think it was probably one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. I know, we've had Endgame and we've had Infinity War in the past where we've had tons of amazing characters on screen, but this movie really held its own in my opinion. So I'm giving the movie a nice 10 out of 10. This is the second movie I've ever done that to, as far as I remember. This one and Love Lies Bleeding, two completely different movies.
And
Um,
Inside Out too.
Oh, and Inside Out too. Okay, it's my third 10 out of 10. Nice. I do think it's up there. I do think you don't have to see the other movies. I'm pretty sure my mother-in-law, Sarah's mom, I'm pretty sure she hasn't seen hardly any of the movies that came before this. So
She's seen Deadpool 1 and 2, but outside of that, like in terms of she probably I don't think
I don't
let
think
me
she's seen
start over.
anything with Wolverine
I think she's seen probably the original X-Men around the time it first came out, which was quite some
a
time
long
ago.
time ago.
So not anything since then is my guess.
Yeah, and she had a blast. So, if you're in that same boat where you've seen a couple of them, you probably will too. So, Sarah, what would you give it?
I'm also going to give it a 10 out of 10. Just the amount of times that this movie, quote unquote, went there or like stretched the joke to a point that you thought they couldn't put in a movie without it being like not rated. I just, the imagination that they put into this film was amazing. So I really appreciate it. I feel like there was lots of good comedy, there was lots of good action. There was lots of references to various things that you might not get all of them, but I think the typical audience member would get a handful of them, enough to make it enjoyable. From I'm gonna leave it at that. But yeah, I'm also at a 10 out of 10. I had a great time. And I would watch one of the things I always say with these movie reviews is would I watch it again? I would watch this on repeat. No problem.
Same. All right, so we are going to transition to the spoilers. Just to give you all a second to click away, I'm going to say, Sarah, if you were to walk into a restaurant and you were to put money in a tip jar where it said Deadpool in one jar or Wolverine in the other, where's your tip going?
Oh man. Well, I I haven't seen enough of Wolverine to really be like Team Wolverine, although he does have a smoking body. Sorry, Jeremy.
He does. Hey, you got to give credit where credit is due. I do not have that body, and he is much older than me.
I'm sure it took him a long time to get in that kind of shape, but I gotta put it in the Deadpool jar. His humor is just there's nothing like it.
I think I mean, I grew up with Wolverine, but I think I'd put it in the Deadpool jar. But it would be like it's kind of like, if there was a crazy scenario where you had to, pick one kid over the other and you're like, I am so sorry, but I'm picking this one.
Oh man.
It's tough. It's tough. But okay, let's get into spoilers. So when I was saying, whether you need to watch the other movies or not, the reason why is because this movie is kind of a almost a love letter to a lot of the Marvel 20th Century Fox properties that happened in the past. Um, I mean, I'm pretty sure that all, if not yeah, technically all of them are, I think, characters from 20th Century Fox, and then they're, coming over to the MCU. And basically, what this movie is that, Deadpool wants to be part of the Avengers. He even applies, he gets an interview and doesn't get in, but they said, we'll watch over you. And it's kind of like a if we need you and we think you'll fit, we know where to find you kind of a thing. And so
Well, don't that's not where this movie starts.
It isn't where it starts, but that's kind of what the movie's about. I mean, the movie starts just like I think the other two Deadpool movies do as well, where it's kind of like right in the thick of the action, and then he's like, "But I should explain how we got here," kind of a situation. Um, so yeah, I guess we'll double back to that. So the movie opens with Deadpool out in the snow. He is looking for Wolverine, and he finds a little gravesite with the X with the some sticks, and this is where he is. And so he goes in there digging for him. He's explaining to the audience, that he has these regenerative powers, and there's no way that he can actually be dead. And so when he gets down to the bare bones of the dig site, he gets really upset, starts smacking them with the shovel that he brought, and come to find out that Wolverine was just bones at that point. Well, bones and is it adamantium? Is that how you pronounce it? The metal in his claws.
I have no idea. I'm just gonna go with yes.
Okay, yeah, he still had his metal. So we kind of get this funny little scene where he's sitting with, skeleton Wolverine, and he's talking to himself, and because Deadpool had a purpose to try to find Wolverine, but he gets interrupted by some soldiers, and this is where we get our first action sequence, and it was really cool because it started with. Or no, it was the NSYNC song. Was it the NSYNC song the whole time? Okay, for some reason when I was listening to it, I thought like the first half was one band and the second half was another. But
I think it was all the same song.
so this we get like a cool action sequence of Deadpool taking out these dudes to the song Bye Bye Bye, from NSYNC, which was great, especially if you're a 90s kid like we were. I mean, we grew up with that music, so it was cool to hear it again. Uh, but does that whole run around, takes care of the dudes, and then he's like, but wait a minute, how'd we get here? And so that's when we learn about the backstory, right? Sarah, what's the backstory?
So if you haven't seen Loki, you probably aren't aware of the Time Variance Authority. This is one of the things that I was mentioning that do you need to, or that Jeremy was mentioning, do you need to see all the other properties to know what's going on? No. But hearing Time Variance Authority, if you've seen Loki, you have kind of a basic understanding of who they are. My mom has definitely not seen Loki, and she was still able to piece together what was going on. So anyway, so Time Variance Authority, they're like the time police. If you start messing with your timeline can die. There's somebody called the Anchor in Deadpool's universe. I guess Wolverine was the Anchor, so once he died, the whole timeline was kind of collapsing in on itself. And there's this guy who goes by uh
Paradox.
Paradox. Yes, thank you. So what an interesting name for somebody who's dealing with timelines. So he wants to give the timeline a mercy killing and just end the timeline right away instead of letting it play out for thousands of years, which is kind of telling Deadpool that, his whole world's going to collapse. But he's brought there because Paradox wants Deadpool to finally become an Avenger. You can do this awesome thing, basically mercy kill your timeline and just join like the one true timeline, and you'll be a hero there with the Avengers. But that means all his friends would be dead, and like his girlfriend and stuff, who he's apparently having a hard time with, because she wants him to do something with his powers, like actually use them for good and try to help people instead of just being an average Joe.
That was one thing that I thought was kind of a part of the movie too. I mean, we at one point we get a whole scene where she's like, you did all these things, and now you're not doing anything. You could be better. You could be doing all these things. Lady, he went through a lot of stuff. Have you looked at his face? Like, seriously, just leave him alone. Let him live a normal life if he wants to. You know what I
Yeah, this movie was so long that I think that's why they didn't take more time to go through that emotional part of things because they wanted more time for the action and laughter parts. But that was something that I think could have used a little more. Um,
Reasoning. Like,
yes.
That there could have been a better reason.
Yeah. It didn't seem super, it seemed kind of weird that all of a sudden she's got a boyfriend or she's seeing somebody else. Like, I'm like, what? Like, I thought you guys were in love. Like, this is weird.
Yeah, why would she be at his birthday party if she, like if you just basically broke up with the dude, that's kind of a slap to the face, or like it's really weird that you'd show up at his birthday party.
Yeah, and it was strange.
Hey, I'm digging this other guy, but happy birthday.
So, yeah, so Deadpool doesn't want his timeline to be messed up, right? So he's got to find a new Wolverine to be the anchor in his timeline, or at least that's how he thinks he's going to fix things. And so he goes through, he steals I'm going to call it the remote that Paradox was holding, where he can travel to different timelines. So he's looking for a different Wolverine, and he's getting his butt kicked over and over and over by all these different variations of Wolverine. One's like a
Short Wolverine, one's like Afro Wolverine.
one was like an 80s. That might be the Afro one that you're talking about. One was like an 80s back alley, I'm gonna beat somebody up type Wolverine.
One was Henry Cavill, which it makes me wonder if he was in the running to play the Wolverine at one point, because based on some of the other things we saw in this movie, that makes perfect sense.
That was my assumption also, but I didn't know the background behind that one, so I wasn't sure.
I'll look it up while you keep going.
Okay. So he finds one that's basically too drunk to fight him, and that's who he brings back to Paradox. Paradox kind of laughs in his face, says that you brought the worst Wolverine of all the Wolverines because he essentially ruined his time, he ruined his life essentially. So we find out way later in the film that the reason why Wolverine's kind of world collapsed around him, and they hinted at this a lot in the preview, and I didn't understand, is this something I'm supposed to know before watching the movie? Like, is this something from Logan? Because I haven't seen Logan. But it's not. We learn it here. So I guess in that particular timeline with the Wolverine we have in this film, he never wore the suit because he didn't want to show that he wanted to be part of the X-Men, and he was out at the bar one night while the rest of the X-Men got attacked by the humans in that world, and they all died. And Wolverine was the lone survivor. So to kind of show that he misses his family, for lack of better terms, he wears the suit. So that's why he's wearing the suit in this film, even though he wasn't really thrilled about wearing the suit beforehand. Were you able to find it?
Yeah, it looks like so when everybody found out that Disney, acquired 20th Century Fox, a lot of people were wondering who would play the Wolverine in the MCU, and Henry Cavill was like a fan favorite. And so
Instead of keeping Hugh Jackman?
I think there had been some rumors that Hugh Jackman wasn't going to come back. Like Logan was his send-off movie, and so I think that's why they were looking for it. But clearly he's back. Nobody
Shady's back.
else, nobody else is the Wolverine, in my opinion.
He's got the hair for it and the muscles.
For sure,
Gotta love those muscles.
they were glistening.
So he, to get Wolverine to kind of help him, oh, we're not there yet, I guess. So Paradox sends them to the Void so that they can't mess around with his plans because he's got this weird like time ripper that he's trying to get fixed so that he can end the timeline without the Time Variance Authority knowing what he's doing because they don't like the whole mercy killing stuff. It's kind of like those assisted suicides almost, except for timelines, which is a weird thing in itself. But anyway, so they get sent to the void. This can you maybe explain to us what happens, who they meet there with Johnny Storm?
Yeah. So I mean, before they even meet him, this is one of the scenes where Deadpool and Wolverine basically have a spat and they fight each other. We get some suggestive jokes here too, which were pretty funny. But in the end, uh, it's really funny because Deadpool makes a joke about Mad Max and says something along the lines of, that would be an IP infringement if we did something here. And so they kind of avoid it, and then there's like this crew heading their way, and they look
Well, don't forget
just
the
like
statue too.
right. Well, I mean, you mean the 20th Century Fox statue? Yeah, it's in the trash. The Void is basically the trash of Hollywood in a way. Um, and it'll make sense a little later too. But the people are approaching them, and it looks like a gang, from Mad Max, and which I thought was kind of funny. We do see another character show up, Chris Evans, and it's funny because Deadpool was like, he's about to say it because, he's been wanting to be an Avenger. He sees a character being played by Chris Evans, and he thinks he's about to say, like, Avengers Assemble. And instead, he goes, Flame on, because he is the Human Torch from Fantastic Four in the 25th Century Fox realm. And so it's kind of funny to see how Deadpool's reaction is to some of, the issues with the actor and other characters. So the group eventually meets up with them, and this is the scene from the trailer where we see Sabretooth, so Wolverine's brother, and he comes out, and I thought this scene was going to be longer and maybe a little more significant, but basically we get one little shot where Wolverine and Sabretooth run at each other, and Wolverine basically chops his head off, and then that's it. And so Deadpool picks up the head and is like doing a whole Mad Max speech, even quoting saying Furiosa. So that was kind of funny to see, he was just worried about IP infringement, and here he is just going off at it. Um, but basically, what this boils down to is that the group does some more stuff, and our heroes get knocked out and like literally knocked out. And then they're taken prisoner, and then they're taking the little bandwagon group, takes them to their leader, really. And this is where we see the Ant-Man costume thing from the preview, and we see the mask open up, and we see a skull. And this is basically the hideout of the big baddie. The big baddie in this movie is Cassandra Nova. And from my understanding is that Cassandra Nova is Professor Xavier's sister. Is that what you got from that?
His twin, she killed him in the womb by strangling him with the umbilical cord. Something like that.
Yeah, it was um, nothing left to the imagination on her description of what happened. But basically, so she comes out. She's basically, like I said, the big baddie. People don't cross her, and Deadpool is trying to make conversation with everything, even though Wolverine basically said, "Shut up, don't say anything" in this instance. And Deadpool is saying that the Human Torch said all these things. And the Human Torch is like, "What? I never said these things. I don't even know what he said." And we see Nova's powers on display here because she like disintegrates his skin, and all of his insides just become mush and land on the ground. So we know that she is very strong. Um, but basically, what ends up happening here is after some exposition and learning about where she's from, like how Sarah said, she was the twin of Professor Xavier. There is this like smoke monster that always wants some sort of offering, and so her plan is to basically give up Deadpool and Wolverine as it's dinner, essentially. But Wolverine finds a little. Uh, I would say leg of something that has like a jetpack on it. He runs to it, and so does Deadpool. They push the button, and they get basically ejecto seat out of there. and avoid the big smoke cloud monster. I think at this point, so they're walking through the fields, they're talking to each other, being Deadpool and Wolverine, and off in the distance, we see uh, the probably the cutest character of all, and it's the little doggy. The little doggy is approaching our two heroes. Deadpool picks up the dog and is really enjoying it. And then we see like this alternative variant of Deadpool, which is basically feminism Deadpool. He's like super nice and he's got long, luscious hair. He's not wearing a mask. And basically is claiming that the dog is his. And so our Deadpool, being Ryan Reynolds, well, I guess they're both technically Ryan Reynolds, the one with Wolverine. He wants to keep the dog, but he can't, so he gives it back. But they're telling this other Deadpool that they have to get to. Where are they going to exactly? They said they're going wherever. He says,
Trying to go meet the rebels.
okay. And he said there's 12 clicks that way, and I can help you out with the transport. And so he gives Deadpool and Wolverine a Honda Odyssey, was it? And Deadpool is not having it, but they have to do it anyways. And so they get in the car and they take off. Well, eventually they get to the woods, which is our pictures in the background, and they have another little spat. Wolverine just lets Deadpool have it of his thoughts of him, and Deadpool and Wolverine get in a fight and essentially end up knocking each other out. And we see a character, like we don't see their face or anything like that, but there's a character that hops in the Honda Odyssey and drives them away. And so they wake up in what looks like a cave. And this is where some of the real meat and potatoes starts to happen with these cameos and, other 20th Century Fox characters. So the first one that comes out, Deadpool and Wolverine wake up. Like, where are we at? And Wolverine says, I don't care because they got alcohol and he's drinking away. But the first character that comes out is Elektra, Jennifer Gardner's character from way back when. I have never seen the movie, but I know who she is. So we got Elektra. We also got Blade that comes out. So Blade is another one that I didn't see. When those movies came out, I was too young, and so I never really gravitated to them. Um, and then so when this is happening, I'm recognizing this as a fan of the movies of the past, like knowing who these characters are. Um, and
I had no idea who they were.
I was thinking in my head, like, is there would they do Channing Tatum as Gambit? Because I remember from a long time ago that, they wanted to make a Gambit movie. They were going to cast Channing Tatum and it never got off the ground. And lo and behold, Channing Tatum comes out third and he has his cards, he's in the Gambit suit. And sure enough, he is Gambit. So all the people in the past that wanted to see Gambit come to life on the screen, although I'm pretty sure he is in one of the X-Men movies, just not Channing Tatum. But it's like super quick and brief. He doesn't have his own movie per se. But we do get to, see him in the flesh here. Uh, they do talk for a little bit, I believe, before the fourth person comes out and reveals themselves. But essentially, Deadpool and Deadpool himself is trying to figure out what can they do to take down Nova. And eventually, the fourth person comes out, which is the girl from Logan, and I forget her name, Laura. I think it is. It
Yes.
says here. Uh, Laura is the little girl, like I just said, from Logan. I believe she's the one that went and got them with the Honda Odyssey. But basically, they all think of a way to possibly handle taking out Nova, which is if we can get Juggernaut's helmet and put it on her, then she can't use her abilities. And then maybe we can take her out. Wolverine is not 100% on board with this. We do get some character development with Laura. This is the campfire scene that we see from the preview. I think it's like the one shot that we see of her in the trailers. But basically, this is where Wolverine kind of pours his heart out, admitting what happened in the past and, why his planet failed or his timeline failed. And
Why he
then,
wears the suit.
yeah, and why he wears the suit. And so basically, she's kind of convincing him, you messed up before because of your drinking, and he's actually literally drinking in the scene. You messed up before, you can make things better. And so the next day, we see our crew rolling out to the Ant-Man area where Nova is, and Blade uses an RPG to blow up a hole. They drive in. All the characters get out except for Wolverine, but then he gets his own little special entrance. He comes out the trunk of the vehicle. So this creates a big battle within the area. A lot of Nova's minions are fighting our group, but Wolverine and Deadpool eventually make their way up to Nova. And what goes down here, Sarah?
Well, I'm just gonna take a second. I was looking up to see if that actress actually was wearing a bald cap or not for this because they keep their hair really short just in general. And they are wearing a bald cap, and I have seen a lot of really bad bald caps lately. And I think they did a really good job in this movie not being able to see the bald cap line. So I'm just gonna give them kudos there. Okay. So apparently Cassandra's got some weird, she's Cassandra Nova, so same character. Uh she's got some weird powers where she can like stick her hand inside your head and it's like sticking out through your different like body holes and stuff in your head. And it's really weird. Deadpool makes a joke about his head being fingered and whatnot, so there's a sense of the kind of humor you can see from this film. But that's how she reads thoughts. She makes a comment about how Xavier didn't have to do that stuff to see thoughts, but she's got to do it the dirty way. She's got to basically reach her hand in your brain to know what you're thinking about. So she's trying to manipulate these people, mainly Wolverine, into thinking the absolute worst and how she can quiet all the voices and she's the answer and whatnot. But Deadpool had been kicked aside. This is the scene also where she does the weird like conducting with her hands to make Wolverine's claws stuck in the floor. So that way she can read his brain without him like fighting her because somehow he can't get his claws out for whatever reason. But Laura, so the girl from Logan, right? She manages to get the Juggernaut helmet with the help of the rest of the group on the ground.
And how
And
did she get the helmet, Sarah?
somebody, I don't, who had the knives?
She did. It was Laura.
She was the one who did the knives. She cut his feet off at the ankles, at the Achilles specifically, which I find absolutely disgusting. I have a weird, unusual, what do you call that?
Phobia?
Yes, thank you. All I could think of was a different word that didn't mean that. I have a very weird phobia of things touching my Achilles. It's super disturbing to me, especially in movies where they stick like a knife in the stair. Like think of like a horror movie. I think they do this in House of Wax, where they cut somebody's Achilles through the stairs, like through the floorboards of the stairs. And so like terrified of open stairs because I don't want anything touching my ankles. And what does she do? She cuts his feet off at the ankles, right across the Achilles. It was disgusting. I'm probably making it sound way worse than what it was. It was a very quick thing, but for somebody like me who hates that area being touched or even thinking about it, it was nasty.
When
So
I saw it,
anyway,
though, I chuckled on the inside.
thank you for making me describe that in great detail, Jeremy. Why don't you take it from here?
So she gets the helmet and she's making her way up to where Deadpool and Wolverine are. And one of the people from Nova's crew uses kind of like a lasso to grab a hold of her and pulls her back. But before she falls back, she like throws the helmet in a bag. And it gets up to the area where Deadpool and Wolverine are. Deadpool picks it up and he eventually puts it on Nova's head because she's kind of distracted with Wolverine's thoughts. Um, and so Wolverine is, or Deadpool is asking Wolverine, should I just snap her neck? Because he's kind of holding her, in a chokehold in a way. And Wolverine says, no, we need to let her go, blah, blah, blah. And one of the other characters, I think it's the Freeze guy from X-Men. Um, I don't know his official name, but we have Pyro, and then there's the dude with the ice, and they always are bickering. I'm pretty sure he's the guy that comes up and he shoots Nova 3 times. And then he gets detained. I don't remember how they take care of him. Um, but eventually they do take the helmet off of her, and the reason why they take the helmet off is that she agrees that she will not, kill them or hurt them because they just saved her life. Deadpool and Wolverine, I think it was oh, I remember now. So the dude tried to have his own monologue, and Wolverine punched him, saying, "Not everybody gets a speech." And so because they took him out, Nova says there was this dude that was coming through the void. He was like a magician, and she had a little piece from him, and it was Doctor Strange's portal opener, essentially. And so she opens up a portal and lets Deadpool and Wolverine go through. And so this is where Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, are now back to their own world, where Paradox,
Back to Deadpool's world,
right,
where Wolverine is dead, but not this Wolverine.
right. So they get there, and the portal is still open, and so some other characters could be coming through, which is in
Sandra's first.
who?
Cassandra Nova.
It was?
She comes through because she wants to use the Time Ripper for herself. Paradox shows up, and so she like reaches through his
Oh
brain,
yeah.
basically manipulate him because she doesn't want to. They had a deal where he wasn't supposed to mess with her universe, so that's why she's coming into his because the deal's off now. So she wants to use the Time Ripper to rip apart all timelines except for her own void. That way she can control everything, right? So she takes him out to show her where the Time Ripper is so that she can do what she wants with that.
Right, and she
Then
chucks Deadpool and Wolverine into like a little restaurant.
I think it's a shoe store, but yes.
Oh, I thought it was a restaurant. Oops. And then we see a Deadpool character come out, which is the little doggy. The little doggy comes out, and then we get the feminism dude chasing after him. And then a whole bunch of them show up. So this is kind of like Deadpool's, in my opinion, this is kind of like Deadpool's nod to Endgame when all the characters were coming out of the portals. Because I would say like 100 Deadpools came out. Um,
All different kinds, kind of like Loki, how there were so many different kinds of Loki. Now there's so many different Deadpools. One of them being a baby,
right.
one of them being a lady Deadpool who's actually played by Blake Lively.
Nice. If you didn't, well, if you've seen the movie and you didn't like this feminism Deadpool character, our Deadpool uses him as a human shield, which is pretty crazy. Um, I'm pretty sure he used them as a human shield to take his guns because he had like these really cool golden pistols. And so
Did you
Deadpool takes the
did
golden
you catch the
pistols.
did you catch the fourth wall break that feminism Deadpool said?
Yeah, the proposal.
Yeah.
He was advertising a movie.
Well, the regular Deadpool kept breaking the fourth wall talking about different things or whatever. And so then that's why the feminism one's like, "Oh, I can too." The proposal. And then he looks all cute at the camera like, because he has that cute like baby-like face from when he was in the proposal.
Right. Yeah. So he grabs those guns, and then him and Wolverine. This was pretty cool. So I guess, in my picture, Wolverine has like a little pouch thing behind him, and he can pull it up and over his eyes, and it's the Wolverine suit, basically, that we remember from the animated series, which was really cool. And then they get their whole little montage here where they're ripping through the other Deadpools because they want to kill him. The Deadpools from the Void are not nice, apparently. And so that's why they're attacking our duo. I thought it was kind of interesting here. So they're fighting through the streets, and eventually they get to a bus, and then they have like a bloodbath on the bus. And there's one other movie within the last decade that I remember that had a famous bus scene where people were getting just destroyed, and that was the Texas Chainsaw Netflix movie. And so I thought it was I had wondered if it was kind of like a we did it better situation, but there's a good chance that it was just a coincidence. Um, but I was mentioning something about the CGI in the non-spoiler section. When they get through the bus and they jump out the window at the very end, I thought that shot looked very either off or it almost looked like AI, and I know it's not, but the CGI just wasn't doing it for me on that shot. And the thing is that was a money shot. Like that was them being awesome as they jumped out the window together. So I kind of feel bad that I feel that way about it, but at the same time, I feel like it could have been polished a little bit.
Well, then the last Deadpool that's left of all these different Deadpools is the baby Deadpool. I don't know about you, but I was like, are they going to kill this baby Deadpool? Because they just killed all the other Deadpools. And so I was waiting to figure out there I thought they were gonna have some sort of like funny discussion of like, what do we do? No, you can't kill a baby kind of a thing. But instead the baby's laughing and they figure out why, and it's because, well, the cute Deadpool was not regenerative, but all of the rest of the Deadpool people were. So even though they just killed this whole crowd of Deadpools, they all start to regenerate and come back, including one of them. I think it was I want to say it was some sort of samurai type, or maybe monk type. I'm not sure exactly what type of Deadpool he was, but he has the baby hands. He must have had his arms chopped off because we've seen in other Deadpool movies when your limbs get chopped off, they grow back, but they started like a baby size and then they eventually get to normal size. So I thought that was kind of funny callback to one of the previous movies.
I would agree. Uh, from here, we kind of head towards the end of the film where, we have to stop Nova from messing with the timeline machine. And we get this conversation where Wolverine believes that Deadpool has something to go back to, but just as Wolverine is about to head in, Deadpool does a switcheroo and goes in instead into the room with the time continuum machine. And Nova is already like grabbing a hold of this thing and trying to destroy it. But Deadpool gets in there. He grabs onto one of them because there's two of them. They have to come together to make it work. He's grabbing onto one of them. And then in the nick of time, we see Wolverine come out and he grabs onto the other one. And then they hold hands together so that they have one continuous connection, which from the energy repulse, it does rip Wolverine's clothes off from the waist up, so we get to see his glistening muscles in this glorious shot.
But he
Um,
keeps the mask on and he keeps his pants on, but just the shirt comes off.
right. They make it out, right? They save the thing. Basically, it explodes and Nova is destroyed. We are led to believe that our characters might have died, but Paradox is being interrogated by the TVO, and he's like, "My friends died. They were doing this noble thing, blah blah blah." And then Marvel Jesus, also known as Deadpool, comes out around the corner with Wolverine and is basically saying like, "Haha, we're not actually dead." And then the truth comes out, and Paradox is in big big trouble. Uh, and then Deadpool asks the TVO to basically
VA.
TVA, sorry, to clean up the timelines and fix some things. And although she doesn't want to fix up Wolverine's past because his past is what made him who he is today, they did clean up, the fact of bringing those 20th century properties that were quote unquote forgotten and brought back in. So we get like a little scene at the end where Deadpool, Logan, uh, Lo double check her name. Want to get it right? Is it Laura?
Laura.
Yeah. Laura's there, and basically Wolverine tells Deadpool to, talk to his uh, significant other and try to make amends. And it turns out that this was enough to please her, because she couldn't just deal with a normal guy, I suppose. Um, Before the end credit stuff, is there anything else you think is worth mentioning? They do they do emphasize this like Peter Deadpool character quite a bit. But I don't know. I thought he was an okay character.
I didn't really understand his significance. It was kind of like Deadpool's friend in the very beginning of the movie from his original timeline, and I guess all the other Deadpool had a Peter friend in their universe
Hmm.
too. So that's why they were like, "Oh, we love Peter." And so our Deadpool is able to get away from all the rest of the Deadpool because they're like idolizing Peter. And so that's why he says like, "Have fun with my Peter."
Right.
And that's how he's able to get away from all of them without having to kill them all over again.
Which definitely has a double meaning. Um, so yeah, the movie closes out pretty much right after that, and then there's some stuff while the credits are rolling. There's a lot of behind the scenes of, the 20th Century Fox characters and movies when they were in production from a wide variety of the cast members throughout the years. Um, but the
Well, it's
actual,
dating back to like the original X-Men, right?
oh yeah, yep, including interviews and seeing some behind the scenes stuff as well.
And
Uh,
Chris Evans too.
yeah, he was one of them. I mean, they had stuff from him, they had stuff from Blade, they had stuff from Elektra, all the different characters that actually had a movie. So, like, there wasn't anything for Channing Tatum's Gambit because it was never made or even in production. So, the end credit scene, Sarah, what happens? Do you not
Uh,
remember?
I remember the one that you just talked about.
The
Oh, yes. Okay. So our end credit scene, which if you've seen the preview for this film, you know that there's like a little QR code that you could scan that brought up Ryan Gosling talking about the movie and how he hates end credit scenes because it's always just a commercial for the next Marvel movie, usually anyway. It was different. So there is an end credit scene, but it's not a commercial for a future movie. It's him proving that Johnny Storm, or what did you call his character? The
uh,
Flame
Human Torch.
Human Torch. Thank you. I never saw any of the Fantastic Four movies, so I didn't know what he was called in that realm. Um, but, but they showed proof that he actually said all those horrible things about Cassandra Nova, and it's just I think it was just one of those things of like Chris Evans is such a sweet guy. He always plays like a really good character, or at least for the Captain America character he is. You know, he's just a really sweet, nice guy. So you'd never expect him to say all these horrible, nasty things. So it's just basically him shooting off his potty mouth, saying all the things that Deadpool said he said. So proving that Deadpool's right.
Yeah, and that Deadpool was not responsible for his death.
Yes.
That's what he's trying to clear is his name for not being the cause of death. But so yeah, that is basically the movie. There's tons of one-liners throughout the movie. There's a lot of comedy, a lot of good stuff. So make sure to go out and see it in theaters because it's a great way to experience the movie. Uh, just a quick reminder, I gave it a 10 out of 10. Sarah gave it a 10 out of 10. Sounds like a pretty good one, I would say. Um, But if you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop us a like if you liked the video, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. Please
Keep
try
it
to,
spoiler free in the comments, please.
that's what I was going to say, try to avoid the spoilers until, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months down the road. Once it's available on streaming, then talk about spoilers if you're, checking us out after seeing it from streaming. But as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.